Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, I'm going to include information regarding the disappearance and water death of Dakota James in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The clips that I will include in this podcast came from my investigation and were included in my film, The Smiley Face Killers, Who Was Abducting, Torturing, and Murdering College-Age Men in the U.S. and U.K. So I might interrupt some of these broadcasts and some of the newscasters who are talking about the disappearance of Dakota James before he was found in the Ohio River. And I'm going to finish this podcast with a press conference that included the mother of Dakota James, Pamela James, as well as retired detective Kevin Gannon, who wrote the book with Gilbertson, Dr. Gilbertson, titled Case Studies in Drowning Forensics, which covers 14 of these Smiley Face Killer cases. Also included in the press conference is Cyril Wecht, and it was a remarkable press conference for a variety of reasons, primarily the fact that forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht took a look at the state's autopsy and saw ligature marks on the body of Dakota James, which was a differing opinion than what the state investigator had. So it was a remarkable press conference, and this is a very timely show about Dakota James, because tonight on Oxygen will be a 6-part series that will cover many of the cases of what's known as the Smiley Face Killers, and will include Gannon, Gilbertson, Duarte, and another retired police investigator, I believe, by the name of Donovan. So I will kind of interject some information, some times and dates, and some background with each one of these clips as it progresses. The length of the press conference that took place in Pittsburgh was roughly about 25 minutes or 20 minutes, so that will be the longest one. And like I said, I may stop it and just interject and talk about what's going on. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the show. Also, if you'd like to support my ongoing investigation into what's known as the Smiley Face Killers phenomenon, this phenomenon of young men disappearing typically at night, being out at a bar, and then being found later in water, oftentimes in dates that are much longer than would be expected if somebody accidentally drowned, you can go to my Patreon site, William Ramsey, and help contribute. I do need to re-edit the documentary that I completed in 2016, October of 2016, and get it back up. I think it's important that other observers who are interested in this Oxygen show can also see my documentary and see what my research, I believe, confirms in the investigation of Gannon and Gilbertson. You can also check out my postings about the subject on my social media sites at MeWe, Minds.com, OneWay, Gab.ai, etc. So I think that this case now, with some of these promotional videos that are put out by Oxygen, I saw one on Facebook that indicated or showed that 2.5 million people watched it. So that is quite an incredible amount of interest in these cases that really hasn't been seen in the past. So if you can support in any way, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Also, you can see the audio as well as the video on my YouTube channel, William Ramsey Investigates, and see the dates of my investigation on my YouTube channel. So please go there, subscribe, and share. And I think some of the additional visual information is also helpful in investigating this case. Thank you. The following audio is from a video I made about the disappearance of Dakota James, which took place on January 25th, 2017. And the video I made about his disappearance was made on February 10th, so it had been about 14 days since he had been missing. So this is the audio for that, and I also included a broadcast news from Pittsburgh that was from February 3rd. So I will continue just putting in dates. So February 3rd, 2017 is when the newscast was. Thank you. Hi, this is William Ramsey. The following video is about the disappearance of Dakota James on January 25th, 2017 in downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Dakota James is 23 years old and is a graduate student at Duquesne University. On the night of his disappearance, he was at the 941 Saloon on Liberty Avenue in downtown Pittsburgh. Told he had too many drinks, he was asked to leave the bar. The last picture of Dakota James was seen on CCTV down the street from the 941 Saloon. He seems to be walking fine and able to text on his phone. You can see here from this map that the 941 Saloon is in the downtown Pittsburgh area. On the Gay Pittsburgh website, the 941 Saloon is described as a mixed, welcoming crowd with a variety of themed events. The party ends at 2 a.m. but can continue upstairs at their after-hours club. This is what the 941 Saloon looks like during the daytime in downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Here's a following report about the disappearance of Dakota James on February 3rd, 2017.
Dakota James' family is from Frederick, Maryland, about 3 hours away. Over a dozen of them, with more on the way, have come here to Pittsburgh to aid in the search for the one they call Cody, to try and bring him home. Love,
extremely difficult,
and desperation.
We're just trying to get the word out.
Were measured in steps.
It's pretty hard.
And strips of tape.
We just got to keep moving.
Shane James is Dakota's older brother. He came to Pittsburgh over the weekend to help with the search. Today, one team of at least 4 walking around, asking anyone if they know anything.
It's slow going, and we haven't really, we haven't heard anything.
Pittsburgh police say Dakota James was last seen around downtown about 11:30 Wednesday night. His family was told the 23-year-old Duquesne graduate student's phone also pinged along Grant Street around then. James's aunt, Angela Meadows.
So we're walking across rivers. We're walking through every neighborhood. So any call-ins, any leads, please share.
Also part of the search,
I just want him back.
Dakota's father, Jeff, who says this entire family is struggling. He says his son always stayed out of trouble and wouldn't be the type to just go silent.
I don't even know how to put that in words, how it's just not, something's happened.
This family is intent on helping police figure out just what that something was. For now, they keep walking, taping, and hoping.
Thank you so much. If we don't keep moving, what else are we going to do?
The next clip is from February 7th. Note they're taking a look in the river.
Tonight, a new lead in the case of a missing grad student who vanished 2 weeks ago. Will it help 23-year-old Dakota James? Good evening. Police have just released a new surveillance photo of Dakota. It was taken the night he disappeared.
It is giving us a new look at where he may have been going. Kim Gable is live at police headquarters with new developments in this case. Kim.
And Susan, the Missing Persons Division here at headquarters released this new surveillance photo just a couple of hours ago. We're going to give you a closer look at this in just a moment. This is just another piece to a mysterious puzzle that has consumed a family who just wants to bring their son home.
Pittsburgh police just released this new surveillance photo. It shows Dakota James walking through Katz Plaza in the Cultural District at 11:46 p.m. on January 25th. Prior to this, the last known sighting was reportedly at the Wood Street T station. We also now know the coat he was wearing was dark gray or black, not olive green. Hundreds of volunteers, first responders, and businesses continue to help Dakota's family in their desperate search.
We love you guys. You helped us out so much. We just need to finish it. I feel like we've come a long way in the last week and a half, and we just need to finish it. We just need to bring Cody home.
Earlier Tuesday, search dogs picked up a scent in the river near the Roberto Clemente Bridge. Dive teams spent hours in the water, but found nothing.
In this situation, we understand the grief that the family must be going through, and they're still doing their best to try to bring this situation to a closure for the family.
Police say there may be more video or photos out there. They are urging the business community and the public to contact them with any additional leads.
Now, detectives here have researched and searched through hours and hours of surveillance video from at least 16 different locations throughout the city. We also know that River Rescue has actually been on the water daily conducting their own searches. Chief Scott Schubert assuring the public and the family in a new statement tonight saying, quote, "Our detectives are diligently working every angle. We will find Dakota." Reporting live tonight on the North Side, this is Kim Gable, KDKA TV News.
Police recently determined the route that he was seen walking down Liberty Avenue. You can see it on the top of this map, straight down the avenue. But he was also seen in Katz Plaza, which is north of Liberty Avenue. So he seems to have been kind of walking in random. Like many other families of missing young men, the family of Dakota James created a GoFundMe page to hire a private investigator, offer a reward, and for other expenses related to the search for their son. Hi, this is William Ramsey. The following video is about the disappearance of Dakota James on January 25th, 2017 in downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Dakota James is 23 years old and is a graduate student at Duquesne University. On the night of his disappearance, he was at the 941 Saloon on Liberty Avenue in downtown Pittsburgh. Told he had too many drinks, he was asked to leave the bar. The last picture of Dakota James was seen on CCTV down the street from the 941 Saloon. He seems to be walking fine and able to text on his phone. You can see here from this map that the 941 Saloon is in the downtown Pittsburgh area. The body of Dakota James would be found in the back channel area of the Ohio River downstream from Pittsburgh on Monday, March 6, 2017.
Yes, the body of that missing graduate student found in the Ohio River. It is the news that Pittsburgh was hoping would not come true, but police just confirmed the body is that of Dakota James, who was found in Robinson Township this morning. And
the following is from a Pittsburgh police news conference announcing the discovery of the body of Dakota James.
The missing persons detectives, the violent crime squad, and the mobile crime unit responded to the 4600 block of Royal Avenue. On scene at the 4600 block of Royal Avenue, Pittsburgh police detectives were met by the Robinson Township Police Department and the Allegheny County Police Department. Neville Island and the Robinson Township Swift Water Rescue teams escorted an unidentified person from the Ohio River. The person recovering from the water was identified as Dakota James by way of physical evidence by the Allegheny County Medical Examiner's Office at the scene. At this time, Dakota has been taken to the Allegheny County Medical Examiner's Office for further examination. Until the examination has been completed, additional details regarding this death investigation cannot be released at this time. Our investigators have sat down with the James family, and at this time, I would like to express my sincere condolences to the James family. At this point, I can open up for any types of questions that you may have. It's limited what I can say at this point, but do you have any questions for me?
Is there a reason to suspect foul play, ma'am? Any reason at all?
At this point, this is an ongoing investigation, and the medical examiners has to examine the body.
So you're waiting on his decision, their decision, before you move forward?
Exactly.
Can you say whether there was any sort of trauma to the body?
This investigation is being conducted by the medical examiners.
We understand about this being identified at the scene. Can you confirm what personal items that were on the body that led to that confirmation, in addition to any physical characteristics, things that he had, whether wallet or revolver?
At this point, we will not be releasing that information.
What was he wearing?
I can maybe get some help from some of the detectives that was at the scene.
What he was last seen wearing?
Red shirt.
It was a Columbia jacket with a red hoodie.
Did he have his wallet on him? Cell phone?
Okay.
As the assistant chief said, we're not going to discuss that.
Any other questions at this point? Do you have any reason to suspect there was alcohol involved, or whether it played a role?
At this point, the medical examiner's office will examine Dakota and we will get additional information when that examination has been conducted.
I know that there had been extensive searches. This particular area, can you relate, if that was an area that had previously been checked? If so, how long ago? Obviously with the body of the river.
Okay. The Neville Island area, I know, I was almost sure that had been looked at. Can someone here fill me in?
Yes, it was searched.
Yes.
As early as this last weekend.
Yes, okay.
Okay, thank you all for coming. That's all that we're going to take for questions.
All right, thank you very much.
What I'd like you to listen to again is the sequence in the Pittsburgh Police News Conference where a reporter asks the spokesperson or spokeswoman whether the area where Dakota James' body was found was searched recently. And she turns to her left and asks somebody off of screen whether it had been searched, and the response was it was searched that weekend, the weekend before his body was found on the Monday. So listen to this again, please.
We'll examine Dakota, and we will get additional information when that examination has been conducted.
I know that there had been extensive searches. This particular area, can you relate, if that was an area that had previously been checked? If so, how long ago? Obviously with the body of the river.
Okay. The Neville Island area, I know, I was almost sure that had been looked at. Can someone here fill me in?
Yes, it was searched.
Yes.
As early as this last weekend.
Yes, okay.
The guy off screen says, as early as this last weekend. The following news report is of an interview of a woman who discovered the body of Dakota James floating in the Ohio River.
About 8:45 in the morning is when I saw the body. I had a dog on a chain and I was sitting out there relaxing like we do every morning. I was still in my pajamas and I saw something in the river. So I grabbed the dog's leash and I walked down to the river, and that's when I noticed it was a body. Oh, I was horrified. I mean, it was a horrible feeling. Yep, I was screaming for my neighbor. I called 911, and they wanted me to keep following. I would have followed the body anyhow, but I kept following the body. I have a friend that has been very active following the investigation. And I called her and I said, did he have a red shirt on? Because the body popped up more. And I saw a lot of red at one point. And that's when I assumed it was Dakota. We've all been reading up on Dakota, so I was hoping it wasn't him. But when I saw the red shirt, I felt that it was probably him. I just lost my boyfriend in December also. My boyfriend passed away on December 14th. And I mean, this is just a horrible thing to go, have somebody else have to go through losing somebody. So I really feel for the family. They have my sympathy.
The following is a press conference from December 13th, 2018 that featured the mother of Dakota James, Pamela James, as well as Detective Gannon and forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht. Thank you.
They both saw the photos that we presented and agreed this evidence suggested some type of ligature strangulation had occurred. During our meeting, Mrs. James asked District Attorney Sapala what he thought of our investigation. At that point, he said, you have made some very good points that this case should be investigated as a homicide. Mr. DePaula then stated that he would speak personally with the medical examiner. Since that time, more than 2 months ago, Mrs. James has attempted to get in touch with Mr. Zapala several times. On Monday, 12/10/2018, this week, D.A. Zapala emailed Pam James in saying, in summation, how sorry he was for the loss of her son, and although this wasn't the answer she was looking for, he could not assist her at this time based on the Allegheny County medical examiner's assessment. Mr. and Mrs. James deserve answers about what happened to her son, their son, and I will turn the microphone over to them right now. Huh? Pam, you want to speak? Then again, that's not one question.
Thank you to everyone who came out today to meet with us. As so many remember, we are the parents of Dakota James, who went missing on January 25th, 2017. This last year and a half has been a true journey that we hope most will never have to go through. We stated from day one that we knew our son, his habits, his ambitions, and his dedication to living his life to the fullest and working hard to make that happen. This press conference is partly due to you, the wonderful city of Pittsburgh. You deserve to hear what our investigative team and Dr. Wecht found after their tireless hours of reviewing and doing a more detailed investigation into Dakota's case. Today we are here to say once again that our son Dakota did not get drunk, cross 4 lanes of a highway, a cement barrier, walk down approximately 30 steps to urinate, to then accidentally fall in the river. There has never been proof that he ever went on that bridge. To us, this is a homicide, and we will continue to look for the answers on why and by whom. We want to thank Dr. Wecht, Kevin Gannon, Dr. Gilbertson, Anthony Duarte, Mike Donovan, the Army Corps of Engineers, the DA, and to all of those we can't even remember their names that have helped us through our journey. And mostly to our family and our friends who've been through this with us and still continue to support us through our journey. Thank you for being here today.
Do you guys have any questions you'd like to ask Dr. Wecht about the autopsy report? Dr. Wecht, want to come up?
Yes, please, if you have any questions, as a follow-up to the presentations made by Mr. Gannon and Mrs. James, referencing the overall scenario and the findings of a forensic scientific nature, please go ahead and ask. Yes, I have reviewed photos of Dakota James that were taken, several, anterior, lateral, and posterior. And there is no question about there being markings. We would describe these as furrows that would be consistent with some kind of a ligature. Cannot tell you exactly what. But the markings are there. They are clearly discernible, and not something that requires a stretch of the visual imagination. Then when you see these on more than one photo from different angles, then inside photos of the neck show areas of hemorrhage in the base of the neck region on both sides. Now, in an autopsy, there can be sometimes a little bit of bleeding, some extravasation of the blood. But remember, Dakota James had been in the water, cold water, for 6 weeks. So blood would not have been free-flowing. And also, in the absence of damaged vessels, no reason for there to be any collection of blood, any large pool of blood, no kind of hematoma. Interestingly, and surprisingly, I say this from a forensic pathology standpoint, there is absolutely no mention at all of the external furrow markings, areas of clear linear discoloration, or of the hemorrhage seen in the supraclavicular areas of base of the neck above the collarbones, supraclavicular. No mention of that at all. These are the things that were brought to Mr. Zappala's attention. I have been informed by Mr. Gannon and Mr. and Mrs. James, and comments that you have heard Mr. Gannon pass on that were made by 2 retired law enforcement people at that meeting with Mr. Zappala. I was not there. So these are the findings of a specific nature as something that is concrete and tangible. Now, let's go back and correlate those findings with the clinical scenario, so to speak, environmental scenario. Mrs. James, in brief summary, but quite clearly and definitively pointed out the geographic locale of this. Just picture this. This is getting, I think, toward midnight. I believe the last street camera was about 11:49, showing Dakota James walking around the Cats little pavilion there, about 7th and Liberty, and then walking down, presumably. He lived over in the north side, a straight shot up from the 7th Street Bridge. So just think about this. You don't have to be a forensic pathologist or a homicide detective or a bereaved parent. You all know this area and been around, and young people, young adults drinking and so on. But just ask yourself. So let me see. A guy's walking. He's got the bridge. That's going to take him home. Well, gee, maybe he has to urinate. I don't mean to be crude or insensitive. This is a very serious matter. But I speak just as a man who was once a young guy and still today. If you have to urinate, especially it's dark and it's close to midnight, you find a place to urinate. You don't climb over a fence. You don't go down a bunch of steps. You don't walk some distance to go to the river to urinate. And if you have that kind of mindset and that physical ability, that kind of willingness to do this, then what makes you fall into the river? Think about it. It doesn't make any sense. Now I'm going to put all of this together and give you my opinion. As a former coroner, medical examiner, and someone who still very actively involved. They just testified in a murder case in Brooklyn yesterday, and testified in murder cases in San Diego and in Tucson and Clemson, South Carolina, and other places this year. I'm very actively involved. I did 13 autopsies from Monday of last week to Monday of this week. So I'm not over the hill, and I haven't retired. You get this case, you have no knowledge, no information at all. There are no notes. There is nothing that has been expressed of a suicidal ideological nature. Where do you come off signing this case off as an accident? I'm going to tell you what I think, and this now is pure conjecture. This case at that time, when the body was found in March of 2017 and the autopsy was done the next day, this case needed to be signed off as undetermined in terms of the manner of death. If you were satisfied as to the cause of death, drowning, and even there, and I won't repeat what I've already said about the furrows on the mark on the neck, you don't know whether this was strangulation or an attempted strangulation, and then maybe ultimately concluding with the drowning. But let's say you make the determination of drowning. I won't dispute that. You can't make a determination as to the manner of death. My conjecture is the medical examiner did a favor for both sides as he perceived it. We're not going to call it a suicide. We really don't have a basis for that, and we don't want to upset the family. And we don't want to leave it undetermined, because when you leave a case undetermined as to manner of death with these circumstances, then you're saying to homicide detectives, you got to continue. This remains an open file. And we all know about cold case files. I review cases. I'm affiliated with a national organization, AISOCC, cold cases. So I do this professionally, and I do this just as a unpaid participation in a national organization that does these things. So they didn't want to leave it undetermined, because that's the monkey on the back. So we'll take the monkey off the back and we'll call it an accident. There is no reasonable basis. There is no forensic scientific evidence that I am aware of that would in any way even suggest, imply, let alone provide any concrete evidence that this was an accident. Similarly, there is no basis at all, as you review Dakota James' life, and I've discussed this hours over the course of the last 18 months or so with Kevin and with the James family, to suggest that this was a suicide. He was out that night drinking with some friends, went from a couple different places. He was here at postgraduate studies. There was no problem academically, financially, romantically, or anything like that. So there's no basis for suicide. So pull it all together. If you don't want to go the homicide route completely at that time, you leave it undetermined. And this is where it stands. So from a forensic scientific standpoint, I think it is extremely unacceptable, and from a medical legal investigative standpoint, quite unjustifiable and illogical for this case to be signed off, to be terminated, and for the district attorney and the medical examiner to say to the James family that it is all over. And essentially, that's what they're doing, expressing their condolences, but in essence, telling them that we're through, there's nothing that we can do. So that's my take on the case.
Further about that, that said, who would like to explain it? Could you explain why, when he sat with you, said these are great? He gave you the impression that yes, they should be investigated as a homicide, and then didn't want to. Could you tell us what that first meeting with the DA was like, where it seems like you were finally getting something with the hoping to hear?
I'm not here to blame Zapala. He's not the one that's going to have to make the changes here. He did what he thought he could do at the time. Your city's been very busy these last several weeks because of tragedies that he's had to be involved with. And I take that into consideration for everything else that's going on. So I'm not placing any of this on Zapala. What I'm here to talk about is the medical examiner's office being willing to talk with me, talk with Mr. Gannon concerning what we have found. They told us from day one, if you find the answers, you bring them to me, and we will talk about them. And if you have a finding, I will change them for you. But now he won't talk to me. That's what I'm upset. Zapala's a whole different thing. So please don't take it. I don't want that here today. This is about the medical examiner's office not being willing to sit down with me, for me to ask the questions on why certain things weren't in the autopsy and why we can't present our information to them to give them the knowledge that we have. That's what I'm about today.
Do you think they did an inadequate job at the autopsy, or they just didn't know and then they didn't go and try to find it?
I don't have the answers for that. I don't have the knowledge to even answer that question. That's not for me to answer.
I remember when you were walking, just looking for a sign. Actually, the counterfeit, you remember at that time, you were looking at signs and books, doing homeless shelters, Catholic charities that are there. When you were looking at that sign and book, Catholic charities that are student myself, a parent, now that you couldn't be blaming on anyone, but how frustrating is it to hear you find the answers and then I'll take a look at it? Can you express how that makes you feel as a parent, as someone that is trying to make their son's life count and also make someone accountable for what happened?
No, obviously it makes me very angry that they're not willing to sit down and talk with us about it. I've always said from day one that I always felt like we had to do the investigation here in the city. They left it as a missing persons case. They never allowed anyone else to look into his case. And once it's closed as a missing persons case, his file's in a box now, where it should be on someone else's desk because it's undetermined, so someone can look at the information that we have. We have information for the dam. There's no way that his body would have made it through the dam. I can't give you the medical terms on how that happens, but his body would have never made it through the dam. His clothing would have had damage. His body would have had damage, and neither had them. There's a lot here that's not even being said today that needs to be taken to the medical examiner for us to be able to tell him what we found. So it's very frustrating. It's frustrating for me, but it's also got to be frustrating for the people in Pittsburgh who sat with us for 40 days and walked with us for 40 days and went on searches. We had hundreds of people from all over the state, all the surrounding states. They deserve to know the answers, that they were here doing a job for a good reason, that their hard work doesn't go unnoticed for what they did for us.
Like volume that can you share with us a little bit about what it's like was prior to this year's study? Tell us a little bit more about
We've always said it. Dakota was a very determined child from a very young age. He knew what he wanted. He's the type that had a binder. He had everything written down. He knew what he wanted to do and how he was going to get there. He had just left WVU getting his undergraduate degree, moving to Duquesne to get his master's degree, and had already gotten his information to take his LSATs to go back to law school. So he was a very determined child, but he also had other things that he wanted to do in his life. He wanted to travel. He wanted a family. He wanted all the things that anybody wanted. He's no different than anybody else. He just deserves a little bit more respect than he's been given this last year and a half.
The markings that were found, are they the type of markings that could have been made in other situations and other scenarios? Is that the type of thing where this could have happened in water? Just to clarify that a little better.
Yeah, that's a good question. The markings that I have viewed, which are demonstrated on the various photos, do not fit in with postmortem artifacts. Sure, the body was in the water. Could it have been struck or so on? These are not abrasions or lacerations or even significant contusions. Rather, they are somewhat linear areas of slight discoloration, which clearly denote that something had been applied to the neck. And then when you correlate that with the hemorrhage seen after the body is open there above the collarbones at the base of the neck, then that is very strong evidence, rather definitive, that some pressure had been applied to the neck, and this is what we would call ligature strangulation. Now, whether the death had occurred totally related to the strangulation, with Dakota then being thrown into the water, I can't tell you. Drowning is an exclusionary diagnosis. You rule out everything else, and when you find a body in or near the water, then you conclude. Contrary to what some people believe, you find water in the lungs or this or that. Sometimes you find water, sometimes you don't find water. Referred to as dry drowning cases and so on. So we can't be sure about whether it's drowning. As I said, I'm not challenging the diagnosis. I just want to make it clear that when you say drowning, there's nothing of a definitive nature. The lungs were somewhat congested, but that can come, from somebody pressing on your neck. As a matter of fact, the lungs do not contain
an exorbitant amount of water.
Let me just be sure. I've looked at this so many times. I
think the lungs had 400.
Well, I know the weights, Kevin. I know the weights, Kevin. What I'm saying is that the lungs themselves were not filled with water in the tracheobronchial system. As I already said, you don't have to have that. In many drowning cases, you do. We don't have it here. So there's nothing, really strong to indicate that he was alive and then drowned, but he may have been. But repeating in brief fashion the answer to your question, the markings are strong evidence of a ligature having been applied as opposed to some kind of a post-mortem artifact.
Where do you guys go from here? What's next?
Sorry.
That's a good question. Obviously, we're not looking to give up the investigation whatsoever. This is something that we've been hanging our heads against for 12 years, but this Pam did.
Oh, yeah. We're not here to talk about that today. We're only here talking about Dakota's case today.
Right. Well, I just mean that maybe, like, what are you doing going forward to try and keep this case alive and keep folks' attention on it?
Well, obviously, you know that I'll keep the attention there. No, hopefully we'll be able to meet with the medical examiner, and he'll be able to at least get it changed to undetermined so we can get this file back opened and put in the right hands at the police department. I mean, we can't even blame it on them because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So the medical examiner is where we need to go, and that's where we're hoping we can get into really soon.
I would like to ask a question, Kevin, and Mr. James, because I wasn't there when you met with the medical examiner back in May of last year, or attempted to meet with him now. And has he ever offered directly or through somebody else or through District Attorney Zavala to provide you with any kind of physical evidence and to corroborate and to substantiate his determination that this was an accident? I mean, is there evidence of scuffling, slipping? What is the basis of how do you just fall into the water?
We've not been provided with that, any type of that information. The only thing I will tell you about Zapala's office is the medical examiner would not provide me with anything, with no photos. All I got was the actual autopsy. It took me quite some time just to get the autopsy pictures so that I could get them to Dr. Wecht and to Kevin. So that took a lot of work. But I went to Zapala, and Zapala is the one who helped me get those pictures. And if it wasn't for him, then I wouldn't have those, and we wouldn't be here today.
Exactly.
So he has helped us in lots of ways.
He deserves credit for having done that, absolutely.
Well,
thank you.
And that, hopefully the public, which is great. And that's why we're here. Thank you guys for your interest, and hopefully people see this.
Well, and it's part of the story.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys for coming this morning. I really appreciate it.
The following is a trailer for the show on Oxygen that will be airing tonight, Saturday, January 19th, regarding the case of Dakota James. This was published 2 days ago on January 17th, 2019. Thank you.
The first thing I do when I begin the investigation into one of these deaths is the fact that I look at the autopsy report and let the victim's body speak to me, tell me what actually transpired, what happened to this individual, how he died, and anything that's inconsistent with what the police, the family, or even the medical examiners say may have transpired. In Dakota James' case, the prevailing theory was that he was a drunk kid that got separated from his friends and fell into the river on his way home. But when I read the autopsy report, although there's water in his lungs, there's not a significant amount that we usually see in drowning victims, along with the fact that there's other things that I have to look for to decipher, like he's got date rape drug in him, makes that suspicious to me that he's got the drug that most of our other victims have in him. So was he drugged? Was he abducted? Was he held for a period of time? The lack of decomposition that the medical examiner states on a body that's been missing for 40 days tells me he wasn't in the water for 40 days. So where was he for the other, basically, 37 days?
The police never led us to believe that foul play took place at all. And then once Dakota was found, we spoke with the detectives that day We did a conference the next day, to make a public announcement about Dakota being found and working with the medical examiner's office and the police department. But after that, we've never heard from the detectives again. The only reason why I found out Dakota's case was closed is because I called to ask for documents of the investigation, and I have since learned that it has been closed.
If Dakota James actually did fall into the water the night he went missing, the questions that we have to answer is, why are there no physical injuries on his body? In my experience, a body that was in the water for 40 days, traveling in a major river, plus over a dam, would have incurred substantial injuries, besides the level of decomposition that occurs from just being in a body of water for 40 days. And he didn't have that according to the autopsy report. That makes the case ultimately suspicious.
Yesterday on the Drudge Report, there was a link to an article from the Daily Beast titled "The Smiley Face Killers is a Serial Killer Gang Murdering Young Men Across the U.S." And it was a remarkable piece of journalism written by Nicole Wisensay-Egan, published January 18th, 2019. But included in that article was information that I was not aware of regarding Dakota James. So I'm going to read that to you. And it regarded something that happened to Dakota James 5 weeks before he was found. So starting the article, here it is. In the evening of December 15th, 2016, Dakota James called his friend Shelley in a panic. He was cold, disoriented, and scared out of his mind, wandering the streets of downtown Pittsburgh, trying to find anyone who would help him. "I don't know where I am," he told her, sobbing. "I'm so cold. Please help me. I'm lost." Shelley didn't hesitate. "I'm thinking, did he get mugged? Did he get beat up? Was he in a car accident?" She told the Daily Beast this week. "I was so scared. I said, 'Where are you?' 'I'm coming.'" "Pittsburgh North Side," he told her. She quickly hopped into her car to go get him, then remembered she could use her cell phone to figure out where he was, because he'd enabled location services with her when she gave him a ride to the airport months ago. That program was telling her he was on Pittsburgh's South Side, but Dakota was texting her as she drove, trying to guide her. "I'm here," he texted, sending a picture of a jean-covered leg. "Please help me. I'm so cold. The cops won't help me." Her phone's location services told her he was at Spring Hill Suites on Water Street in Pittsburgh's South Side, not North. She texted him with a question mark. "I'm here," he texted back. "I honestly don't know." She got there in less than 10 minutes, arriving around 10:30 p.m. As she pulled up to the hotel, she saw a dark SUV in the wrong lane, facing the wrong direction, and Dakota was walking out of the hotel and straight toward the SUV. "I pulled up not even 10 feet away from the SUV, she said. I said, 'Dakota!' He turns, looks back, then comes over to me, got in my car, and we left. He wasn't slurring his words. He was walking in a straight line, not staggering at all. His clothes weren't disheveled or wet or dirty. He was emotional, still crying, and he was scared, but he did not appear to be drunk." "What happened?" she asked him. "Are you okay?" He didn't want to talk about it, he said. He said he just became aware that he was walking on the street and he had no idea where he was or how he got there, said Shelley, 35, who asked that her last name be used to protect her privacy. He said he went up to a police officer and they didn't help him, so then he called me. The last thing he remembered, he told her, was leaving his work Christmas party, then heading to some bars with his coworkers from J.B. Hunt Transport Services, Inc., where he was a carrier sales coordinator. That was around 7:15 p.m. Everything since then was a blank. I said, "Do you want to go to the hospital?" Because I'm thinking, was he raped? Was he drugged? Because he seemed drugged. Because he lost 4 hours, she said. And he said, "No, I just want to go home." So I just took him home. He was crying so much. The next day he thanked her for picking him up, but brushed off the whole thing, saying that he had a bad hangover. And she might have too if he hadn't vanished 5 weeks later after a similar night out with some of the same coworkers. So that is brand new information that I was not aware of, that Dakota James had an incident where he missed 4 hours of time and couldn't figure out what happened to him. So this is a very important case in what's known as the Smiley Face Killer phenomenon, a fairly recent case, something that happened within the last few years. And keep an eye on that, and please go watch the Oxygen show that is premiering tonight, Saturday, January 19th, 2019. Thank you. And also go check out my documentary, which is on Vimeo, titled The Smiley Face Killers, Who is Abducting, Torturing, and Murdering College-Age Men in the U.S. and U.K. Thank you.